Hi, everybody. This is Jeremy Siskin here, and I'm here with an old friend of the channel. Not that you're old, but this is your second appearance on this YouTube channel. Steve Sandberg,
Yes.
welcome. A
Thank you. Great to be
great
here.
pianist, composer, multi hyphenate, who's making new music all the time. Which I mean, that to me is already an incredible accomplishment. So, how are you, Steve?
I'm great. I'm great. As I was telling you, I had back surgery 3 months ago, which was quite intense and an ordeal, but it's great, and I highly recommend it these days. I had robotic surgery, so I'm just putting in a plug for that if anyone has, because we pianists could have back problems.
Oh my God.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I've kind of been on a mission. I feel like I'm a late bloomer in terms of jazz pianist and composer. So I'm kind of on a mission to do my work and share it, and it's been quite gratifying over the past couple of years. So I've got
Yeah,
a
that
couple
all
of projects.
redounds to our benefit, which is awesome. Yeah, do
Oh,
you want
that's
to
really sweet.
do you want to tell us about some of the projects that you've had going on? I
Yeah,
have one of
well,
your pieces of music over here, but I know
right.
you've
Well,
got a bunch of stuff.
the first project is it started out as music I wrote for a quartet that I was leading. Still active with me, Zach Brock, the great violinist from Snarky Puppy, and Michael O'Brien on bass, and Mauricio Zucchelli on drums. And I was studying classical music, and I was getting back to playing jazz. And I said, what would happen if I used some of these specific classical pieces as inspiration for some pieces for the quartet? And it was just something I threw up against the wall, and they were really, audiences really responded to them. So I accumulated a whole repertoire of these. And then a friend of mine mentioned, she said, Steve, you should write out fully arranged arrangements of these pieces for piano, because a lot of young classical players are getting interested in improvisation again,
Mm-hmm.
and as well as jazz players, of course, and of course a lot of us nowadays, we play both. So I started working on that, and I put together a book of 10 of these pieces, based on pieces by Chopin, Ravel, Debussy, Bach. And what I did is I wrote out a fully composed head, and then I wrote a model solo. So if you're not an improviser, you could play the solo I wrote. I
Right.
also put the chord changes. So if you do improvise, you could play your own solo. So I put this out, and I did a little concert of it. And then I wasn't really happy with the concert I put online because they were very new. I didn't feel I really played them well. So I said, what I did is I replayed the pieces, and I put up there's a playlist on YouTube with my performances and a scrolling score so you could follow along, which I also thought would make them more acceptable. And as I played them, I kept saying, no, I don't like that note. I don't like that phrase. And now I really understand why every time Chopin published his mazurkas or waltzes, there were changes, because it's just the way it is, right? We come back to the work, and we see. So I've come out with the second revision. And yeah, these are 10 pieces. And could I play a little bit of one for you?
Yes, please.
Yeah, this one's I call it subindo, which in Portuguese means going up. And this is based on a Bach three-part invention in F minor. And it shows a lot of my Afro-Cuban roots. It's kind of Afro-Cuban, Brazilian, and it's got some odd meter stuff too. So let me play a bit of that. It goes like this.
Yeah.
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's so funky. I love it.
So that's the head, right? That's the head,
That's
and
so
then
cool.
Next there's a little interlude, and then there's this little written out solo. Let me just play a few bars of the solo.
Yeah, please.
The solo goes like this.
Woo! That's killing, man. I know that's so
Thanks.
hard to do. It's really hard to compose a solo, right?
I really enjoy doing it. I've been improvising on this for years, so it kind of descended from those improvisations. The only problem now is when I play this piece in the future, I don't really see how I could improvise. 'Cause I don't think I'll ever improvise anything as good as what I wrote.
Yeah, totally. And I was playing around with this Chist Valse before you came
Ah,
into the Zoom room, and I just think it's really cool and beautiful. Can you just give me a? I know we didn't plan on this, but can you give me the 30-second version of what you did with this piece?
uh, you want to hear it? Or you want me to talk about it?
Talk about it, and then I want to just play this first section because I
Okay, cool.
enjoy
Yeah, so
fooling around with it.
this is based on a piece by Sibelius that I love called Valse Triste. And the thing, my relationship with this piece is I had this earworm I'm not exaggerating, 10 years. This melody would come to me, a classical melody, and I loved it. And I was like, where is that from? I cannot remember. For 10 years, this was driving me nuts. And then I heard the Valse Triste. It was obviously something I heard when I was a kid. And that's it. That's it. So it's just a fabulous piece, and yeah, I just used it. What I often do is I just take the harmonic structure of what the classical composer did, and then I do something from that, and that was the case with this piece.
Yeah, it's just so beautiful. It's so simple and accessible to pianists of a lot of different levels. But
Oh,
I just think,
thank you.
I love that harmony there, huh?
Mm.
Yeah, I know that's just the opening, and you've got a long way to go, but so beautiful,
Thank you.
so lovely. So where can people check out this book if they would
Oh,
like
so
to play
you can
these
go to my
pieces?
website, stevesandbergmusic.com, and go to Purchase Piano Book, and there's a link to the YouTube playlist, or go to my YouTube channel and look for, I think the playlist is Steve Sandberg Compositions and Improvisations. And as I said, the whole book is there with my performances and the scrolling score, and then the PDF is available for purchase on my website.
Awesome, and we'll make sure we have links to all of that beneath the video.
Awesome. Thank you.
But you also promised that you would teach me something today, which I'm always excited about. I still use the exercise that you taught me last time, right? If I'm remembering correctly, you taught me about using constant eighth notes, but only playing arpeggio notes, only playing chord tones.
Yes, and I got that from Ethan Iverson.
Yeah, so that's something
Yeah,
that I still do with my students from time to time. So I have not forgotten,
awesome.
and I'm
Well,
curious
that's a
what you
great
brought today.
exercise, and it was so useful for me as someone who was coming into playing jazz from playing classical piano, because a lot of classical pianists, we have all the finger facility, but we don't know to land on the chord tones for our bebop lines on one and three. So that's really great for just making that happen automatically.
Yeah, great. So what have you brought us today?
So this is, I always give credit, this is from a lesson I took with a great New York pianist, John DiMartino. And John, it's just the idea of different ways, if you're working on a tune, to focus ways to practice on it. So you're not just kind of doing chorus after chorus. And the first way is to just play on it diatonically. Second way is to add chromatics. And the third way is to take a motif-oriented approach, which could be done one of two ways. And the next way is to work on target notes. And I mean, actually, the list could go on and on, but maybe that's enough.
Go on and on. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious about the first one, Diatonic, because you said that we were going to use the tune Isfahan.
Yeah.
And I know that in the tune Isfahan, the first chord is D flat major, and then the second chord is B flat major, right?
But wait a minute, the first chord is D flat major.
Yeah. Is that not what I said?
I didn't hear you. Yeah.
And then the second one, it usually goes to B flat major.
B flat, right.
So not a lot of notes of that D flat major scale are going to fit over the B flat major. So
no, but you're going to change the scale for each chord.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You want to show me or explain?
Yeah.
Show me?
And I just want to say, this sounds so simple, but I found it so enlightening, especially for such a complex tune as Isfahan, because when I learn a tune like Isfahan, I'm very aware of all the alterations of the chords in the head. So I tend to get very stuck with that. And sometimes I don't get the overall basic harmonic structure of the tune. So when I just stick to diatonic scales, it's actually a little difficult, and it reveals a lot. So
I mean, yeah, when you say diatonic, are you just referring to not adding in any chromatics?
Exactly. So,
okay.
So for the first chord, you could pick your scale. I could do a D flat major or maybe a D flat Lydian, but just no Barry Harris 8-note scales, more classical. And if the B flat major, B flat Mixolydian, and then E flat, maybe Lydian, Mixolydian. That's as far as I'd go. A major. And see, and then these A flat chords in the head, they're very altered and very specific, right? I think they're and I could get too hung up on that, which could interrupt the flow of my improv. So it's very cool to just simplify it and just do back to D flat. Is that clear?
Yeah. Okay. So you're basically just choosing a scale for each chord, and you're limiting yourself to kind of simpler choices. Not necessarily going through the sus to 7 flat 9. You're kind of saying, well, if it's dominant, I'm mostly going to use a Mixolydian.
Right. I'm not using any color tones in the scale. Maybe we could put it that way. But I might use a Lydian mode or just something like that. Or harmonic minor.
Got it. Yeah. So do you want to show me 16 measures or so of that first approach?
Yeah, let's see.
I love that pedagogically, because sometimes, there's so many possibilities in jazz that it can get hard to say to students that was right or that was wrong. But if you're saying, well, we're going to really stick to these scales, to see if you know them, to try to be really clear, it's easier to say, I did good, or I can really see that I need to work on those two measures because I don't know the scales for those two measures. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Can I try that?
Yeah.
So
and I just want to point out, you can limit yourself even more. If you just want to do eighth notes, you could do that. Obviously, I was, being free rhythmically. Mm-hmm. So, it could be tweaked.
Totally. So... told, I like that probably better than the solo I might have played on Isfahan if I tried to use all of my chromatics and fancy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes we lose sight of the basics like that because, as pianists, we're so into theory and the altered scales and the altered this and that. And, you want to have that in your toolbox.
Yeah. Now, at the risk of derailing us, I just want to share with you that there's another exercise that I've heard. And it was funny that you mentioned Ethan Iverson because he shared this exercise with me and I'd already been doing it. But there's also an exercise you could do where you only use the D flat major scale, but you try to frame it so that it fits with the different chords. So
Oh, you mean for this whole tune?
even as we move to B flat major and E flat 7 and A
Right.
major, we're sticking,
Yeah. Ah, wow.
sorry, that's what I meant to do.
Yeah.
It gets really tricky with a tune like this, but especially with tunes that stay a little bit closer to home. Because
Yeah.
when you said diatonic, I thought that's what you meant at first. Was really
Right.
sticking with that key center the entire time.
Well, that's kind of amazing, and the first half of that was beautiful.
Thank you.
I love having that in our vocabulary. It's like Louis Armstrong, and like that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it speaks to Strayhorn's writing that as far as these chords go, it at least in the first half, it does all work with the beat. I've been working on a lot of his tunes, and I find more and more that there are even though the chord seems complex, there are common scales that could go a long way. Often a blues scale.
Yes. Great. Okay. So sorry for derailing us for a second. I want to hear. So the second step is using chromatic notes
Yeah.
in addition.
So.
Okay.
Uh,
Cool. Yeah. Any ground rules that you're thinking about when you're adding
no.
chromatic notes, or just
No,
throw them all
I'm
in,
not
throw it
so.
all into the
I'm not
pot?
so theoretic. Yeah, I maybe went too far, but
I'm
I
just
think
curious.
the first diatonic thing, it just kind of grounds you so that again, like the arpeggio exercises, you are going to be landing on chord tones.
Okay. Yeah. So let me try that one. So.
Ooh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I like that mindset. So I feel like so much of practicing is just mindset switch. So having my
Yes.
mindset being, I'm going to see how many, or not how many non-chord tones are, but I'm going to really try to put a non-chord tone in on just about every measure, just about every chord.
Right.
That's just a different mindset than I'm going to improvise, right? So
Yes,
like to me,
absolutely.
part of what you're describing is just flipping mindsets each time you
Yeah,
practice the tune.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one is motifs, and there are two ways to do it. So the first way is uh, so you work from a motif, and you want to play it three times, where you play a motif, leave a space, an answer, kind of, varied repetition of the motif, a space, and then the third time is more of a variation, and you think of it as a punchline. It's kind of similar to jokes, where there's a setup, and then the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's see if I can do
Yeah,
that.
let me hear it.
Now I'll start another motif.
Yeah, beautiful. And are you intentionally kind of putting them into those 8-bar phrase models of like two,
Yes,
two, four?
yes,
Okay,
yeah.
nice.
Very
Right.
structured. Want to try
Um,
it?
yes, I do. Have you heard that called? I've heard this in college and then never since that's called the sentence phrase model, where you have that kind of 1+1+2 or 2+2+4
Okay.
phrase model.
That makes
Like I
sense.
said, in college they gave it that name, and I've
Yeah.
never heard that name since. But I've
I
never heard
often
that
tell
term.
that to my students, that, hey, you want to speak in sentences and paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Nice.
Did I do it?
Great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great.
Phew, I'm
I
getting
mean,
the
it's
hang.
it's all fun, right?
Yeah,
Ideally.
totally. I always love having a task. When I'm improvising,
Yeah.
if I have a task, I can feel good about it. If it's like, well, I played a solo, I don't know, I don't know if I did good or
Right.
not. It's kind of like, ooh,
Right. Well, that's what makes practicing different from playing, and I like it too because I feel if I have a task, I'm growing.
yeah,
You know?
yeah,
So here's
yeah.
the other way you could do the motifs, and this I got from Mike Longo.
Okay.
Do you know Mike?
I know the name. I've never met him.
Mike was an amazing teacher. He was Dizzy Gillespie's musical director for many years, and
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
still
yeah.
has. Yeah. Anyhow, I was lucky enough to take some lessons from him. So he was very strict about his terminology. He said, this is the way you play a solo. You play a short motif, and then you leave a space, and then you play a corroborating statement, which is a little serious for me, but it's. I mean, I was like, oh, call and response. No, it's a corroborating statement.
Corroborating
But it
statement.
basically means like a very logical answer to the motif. And then you leave the space, and then you get your ego out of the way, and you listen for what wants to be played next.
Awesome. I love it.
Awesome, right?
And
Let
then
me try one of that.
does that cycle repeat, or is it just that
Yeah,
first beginning of the
yeah.
solo? Okay.
Well, it's for the beginning of the solo, and then I think that's the beginning of the solo, and then I think you could just keep listening for what wants to be played, and then maybe if you want to restart, you try another motif.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So let's see.
Cool. I liked it. I love that your version of what you want to hear to come next is unpredictable. Because I think it's easy to, hear that, well, okay, this motif was like this, it should be similar. But in fact, you surprised me a lot of times during that improvisation.
Yeah, and then it's the listening part. I think that's so important. I think a lot of the times, especially us modern pianists who we have tons of exercises and books and methods, and they're all wonderful. I mean, fantastic
Yeah,
stuff.
let's not badmouth books on this
No,
channel.
I'm
No, I'm
not
just kidding.
bad-mouthing them at all.
I'm
They're
just kidding.
fantastic. I wouldn't be playing without them. They're wonderful. And your books are I just love them. Your solo piano book, I work with it all the time. It's a
Oh, thank
revelation.
you.
But having has said that, this key ingredient of you got to get out of your head when you're performing and listen for what wants to be played. I mean, that's really, like all the preparation is necessary and fantastic and great. But when it's time to play, like, let's listen.
Yeah, amen. All right, I'm going to try. So, a motif, corroborating statement, and then listen for what comes next.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Interesting. It's we play differently when we do that. I
You
think
and I.
yeah, both of us. Yeah, I think that particular thing. I mean, I don't remember everything I played, but my first thought to say is that when we do this thing, it's less predictable.
It's certainly a very open-ended prompt, right? To
Yeah,
listen for
yeah,
what comes next. One of the things
yeah.
that I found myself doing that I wonder if you do too is, I would hear an idea for what comes next, and I would kind of dismiss it and move on and wait a little bit longer. And I think there's something about listening that makes me play a little bit more spaciously and not necessarily take the first idea that comes into my head, but say,
Yes,
well,
yes.
okay, I like that, but that's obvious to me. Let me wait a little
Yeah,
while and see if something less
yeah,
obvious happens.
yeah. Well, there's definitely more space, and I think more surprising space.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Intentional space.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Is that a good place to wrap it up, or did you want to show us one more
I
step?
think there's, I mean, there's tons of stuff, but I think that's good. I think there's a lot of material there.
No, yeah, I love it. And I love that it's both structured and open-ended. And people are always asking, how do you practice tunes? And I think doing these kinds of shifts in mindset are so incredibly useful and make you feel like you had a really productive practice session without just practicing licks, or scale patterns or
Absolutely,
something very dry.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
All right. So, stevesandberg.com, is that where people find you?
No, stevesandbergmusic.com.
stevesandbergmusic.com.
Stevesandberg music.com.
And you send me all the links that you want. I will put them in the video description. And
Awesome.
congrats on your second edition of the book and on all the
No,
people
thank
who
you so
come out.
much.
It's wonderful to
Thanks.
see.
All
Take care.
right. Bye bye.